Welcome, welcome you guys. Thank you so much for coming back to my channel and clicking on today's video. This is going to be a little different than my typical interview format. Today, I'm going to show you a clip of about 12 minutes that Dr. Mindy Pelz and I sat down and talked about fasting for women, how it's different, how we want to approach things differently. We talked about in this little clip fasting as well as cold therapy, as well as stress, people who may be a little too stressed out and maybe should not approach fasting. I am going to let you know that there is a full episode that is about an hour long where we dive into carnivore for women. Dr. Mindy has been doing the carnivore diet with her resetter group for a while now. And so it's really interesting to hear her bird's eye view of all these people trying carnivore that had previously been keto, some people even vegan, vegetarian. Really interesting conversation, but I put it onto my podcast. So this is my second full-length episode of my podcast. So I'm going to link all of that in the information section below, as well as in the pinned comments, and just encourage you guys to jump on over to my podcast, subscribe, share, leave me a review. And I will consider putting up this full-length interview at a later date here on my YouTube channel, but just trying out something new. I've had so many requests to create a full-length podcast with a lot of my interviews. So this is the first one. I have a lot more coming in the next few weeks. So make sure you are subscribed and click on those links below so that you can listen to the full episode. I promise you it's very interesting. We also talk about supplements and the liver, how to avoid toxicity with supplements. So many great things in this episode. I don't want you to miss it. Thanks again for watching, and I will talk to you guys again really soon. How fasting for women should be a little different than fasting for men. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So let's start with what I call the beginning of the story. And the beginning of the story is that when we come to fasting, men or women, but especially women, we really should look at three different things. One, we need to vary our fasts. Two, we need to vary our foods, and we can talk about that. And I'll tell you my opinions on carnivore and what we're seeing in our community. And three, and this one really relates to women, I think, more than men because of how we're hormonally designed. We do really well in community. When we do health in community, we actually balance our hormones because we're meant with the spikes in estrogen, we're meant to have connections with other people. And when we get these connections with other people, we raise a hormone called oxytocin. And when oxytocin goes up, then it helps to regulate cortisol and regulate insulin. And then that regulates our sex hormones. So I keep, the beginning of the story is if you're going to fast, you have to keep, as a woman, you've got to keep those three things in mind. You're going to have to vary your fasts. You're going to want to look at varying your foods, and you're going to want to look at how can you do it in community. So, and that might be something as simple as you and your best friend go on like a fast together. We do fast training week on my YouTube channel for that exact reason. So there's a place people can come together once a month and do it in community. So the second part of the story is, okay, varying your fasts. And this is where what is like women have to know. And I do not understand why we're not talking about it. So that's why I appreciate the opportunity to come talk about it. So let's look at your cycle. We're just going to use 28 days as an example. I know some people have 25, some women have 35, but I'm just going to put 28 as a marker. In a 28-day period, the first part of your cycle, like day 1 until you ovulate, which is usually about day 10, 12, again, every woman's different, but in that first part of your cycle, you actually were born to fast there. So if you want to intermittent fast, you want to try a 24-hour fast, you want to try a water fast, your body will do really well once your cycle starts all the way until you ovulate. And the reason for that is the major hormone you are trying to influence at that time is estrogen. And estrogen needs you to be insulin sensitive. And nothing will make you more insulin sensitive than fasting. And if you pair that with like carnivore, you put those two together, like phenomenal. You're going to go into your ovulation period with plenty of estrogen. Once you're ovulating, like day 10 to day 15, I actually don't think the longer fasts serve you. At that point, you've got big surges of estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And so in that time period, you can do some intermittent fasting, but again, carnivore would be great there. I'm a fan of what I call ketobiotic, really leaning into more polyphenol foods. And I'm not necessarily looking for fibery foods, but I'm looking for like the more of like the olives and raw nuts, raw seeds. Those kind of things will really help with making sure that your microbiome's in good shape. So, and then you can do a lot of protein during that phase because you got testosterone coming to you in spades. So it'll do well in that phase too. Once you come out of ovulation, then you can fast again. There's about a 5-day window. You can fast again, deep fast. And then here's the clincher. And this might have been what happened to you. Day 19, you gotta stop fasting. Like 19, until you bleed again, your body needs to make progesterone. And if you are in too much of a cortisol stimulating phase, which some longer fasts, or if you're new to fasting, you're getting a cortisol boost, you don't want that, because there's a nutrient called DHEA, and DHEA will make cortisol, it will make progesterone, and it'll make testosterone. So if you're in a 3-day water fast and it's day 20 of your cycle, you're telling your DHEA, just make cortisol, just make cortisol, won't have any left to make progesterone. So now somebody who's come from the standard American diet, they may go into intermittent fasting during this phase, which is a cortisol spiking experience. And then in that moment, they won't make progesterone. So the real warning times are the ovulation period and this time when you need to make progesterone. Every other time you can fast and have fun with it and get yourself nice and insulin sensitive, but it's a sand trap for women in those 2 times.
Yeah, and that's not being talked about at all. That's why I started watching your videos, because I was like, oh, wait a second. Because when I was fasting, it was just, we just do it all the time. You know, we intermittent fast every day, or we extended fast whenever we want to, whenever we're feeling like it. And there's not really any discussion at all about hormonally what that does, and the cortisol. You know, and my question is, someone that has, you know, kind of more chronic stress in their life, that has, they may be their body already producing a good amount of cortisol from stress, would that person probably need to be a bit more cautious around fasting also?
Yeah, definitely. Again, you'll be fine in the first half. Once you start to actually bleed in the first half of your cycle, if life is stressful and you decide to put in some some fasting experiences that create stress, that won't be as much of a problem there. But once we get to ovulation and we get to where you're trying to make progesterone, yes, that's where the problem exists. A question I get a lot is, well, what if I'm adrenal fatigued? I've been under stress for so long. What if I'm adrenal fatigued? The stress, we have to really separate out that there are different types of stressors. There is your constant, never-ending stress, and then there's what we call a hormetic stress. And a hormetic stress is where you're just putting enough stress on the cells that it forces them to repair. And the example I use with this is when we all went into the pandemic back in March 2020, we all got a little hormetic stress where we had to like reevaluate our lives because we had to stay home. But in that, we learned some cool things. I mean, I'll say for my own self, like my husband and I started working on our garden, and I was kind of enjoying the slower pace. But then when it went on and on and on and on, now it's not a beneficial stress anymore. So that's the thing to know. If you already have a ton of stress and then you add a hormetic stress, that's not good.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to also, you know, and I see people do it with people who are attracted to my channel and me. They tend to be a lot like me. I'm kind of running some private groups now, and people that are in my groups, I'm like, oh Lord, I've just attracted 100 of me, because they don't know how to do anything. They don't know how to do anything halfway. You know, they are doing, you know, if one day is good, 30 days must be great, you know, and I've learned the hard way on so many things, especially with fasting, is like, 30 days is not the best thing for you to do. And you have to be mindful of that. And I see people do it with cold therapy. And I had
Yeah,
I got
no,
sick.
this is funny because I've been saying this, like all these people with cold therapy, I'm like, are they timing it to their cycles? This doesn't make
Right.
sense. So, okay, go ahead, because you're the first person I've talked to about this.
Yeah, I was doing too much cold therapy because, like I said, if a little is good, then a lot must be great. And I had a cold vest, which is awesome. I was having great, I had a CGM on. I was seeing my blood sugar lower. I was feeling really good. But I was wearing this thing every single day and doing cold showers. And then I ended up getting and this was about a year ago, I got a really nasty cold and was just on my back I just got a virus and was knocked out for 2 weeks. And it was directly, my immune system was probably already a little lower because of time of year and everything, but like I directly correlated all that extra cold therapy to my body just saying no more, no
Yeah,
more of this,
yep, yeah,
um so that's another thing we're not talking about with like the cold therapy. It's a
yep,
hormetic stress. We
yep,
have to be, we don't necessarily need to do it every single day.
yeah. It would
Yeah.
be fine in the first part of your cycle,
Okay.
but not at ovulation or when you need to make progesterone.
So
Because you
fascinating.
can get away, and actually one of my favorite hormone specialists that I encourage everybody to go follow on Instagram is Dr. Carrie Jones.
Oh
She's the
yeah.
medical director of the Dutch test, and we do thousands of Dutch tests in our office, and so we get to see the trends. And so she and I were talking specifically about how that first part of your cycle, you actually want stressors. So this is why the longer fasts work, because you need these hormetic stressors to make the cells more insulin sensitive, to
Mm.
wake those cells up and get them to repair themselves. And so cold plunging, phenomenal then. But if you're doing it when you're trying to make progesterone in the back
Mm.
half of your cycle, you're going to tank progesterone. So, but nobody's talking about that.
No. No,
I'm so
it's
happy
just
you thought about that, because that's something I've been like, why? I'm watching on social media all these women jump in ice baths, and I'm like, okay, wait, we need to pause and go, is this right for our hormones? Just because a bunch of men are jumping in
right.
doesn't mean that it's right for us to jump in.